The Galactic Assembly laughed when Earth remained silent. For 10 cycles, humans sent no response. No plea. No surrender. Not even a threat. To them, it meant weakness. To us, it meant war was coming. When the first Terran colony on Alara 7 was glassed by a Zalvari dreadnought, the Assembly expected groveling. Instead, Earth blacked out all off-world communications. No trading. No warnings. Just a single pulse message sent out in every known language. We heard you. Then, nothing. For 5 long galactic months, the galaxy held its breath. The Zalvari fortified their borders. The Sirens positioned fleets near Terran sectors. Even neutral planets began evacuating systems close to Earth's space, fearing a desperate retaliation. But Earth remained mute. Until today. 12,000 ships emerged from the darkness beyond Sector 09. Not primitive. Not outdated. These were sleek, obsidian-plated monsters, silent, disciplined, and moving like a single organism. No grand announcement. No battle cries. No radio chatter. Just an orchestrated cascade of hyperdrives flaring open like the jaws of a vengeful god. The first ship bore a name etched across its side in Terran Basic. Retribution Fleet, Spearhead Class 001 Vengeance. And just behind it, thousands more. Carriers, battleships, infiltration cruisers, and something the galaxy had never seen before, Earth's answer to planetary annihilation. The Assembly finally realized something. Humanity had never been quiet out of fear. We were building. Every insult, every colony lost, every Terran life taken. Earth remembered. We recorded everything. Not for sorrow. Not for history. For target acquisition. And now, Earth's silence has shattered. In its place, thunder. Metal. Fire. Precision. We didn't come to beg. We came to collect. If that gave you chills, make sure to like this video so others feel it too. Drop a comment. What would you do if Earth sent 12,000 ships for you? Subscribe for more human versus galaxy stories that prove why we don't fear monsters. Share this with your crew before Earth knocks next on their door. For centuries, humanity dreamed of reaching the stars. We imagined peace, discovery, diplomacy, and even alien friendship. But space had other plans. When we made first contact, the Galactic Assembly labeled Earth a developing species. They limited our expansion, blocked our tech imports, declared our home system a protected zone, which meant no help, no trade, and no voice in galactic matters. That would have been fine. Humanity always knew how to evolve in isolation. But then the Zalvari bombed our outer colonies. They called it a strategic cleansing. A warning to species who didn't respect boundaries. The Assembly issued no sanctions. No condemnations. Just silence. Earth, however, took the hit like a boxer in the corner, bleeding, yes. But not broken. We didn't yell or threaten. We vanished behind the edge of the solar rim and went to work. Deep beneath the ice crusts of Europa, under the burning sands of Mars, in the shadow factories orbiting Saturn's rings, we built the future. Not for exploration. Not for peace. We built for payback. Earth's Defense Council authorized a century-long black project, Project Thunderwake, to develop faster-than-light propulsion, adaptive stealth tech, gravity-based weaponry, and most critically, the unity of all Terran nations under one command. We became one flag, one fleet, one objective. And when the last prototype left its Mars dockyard, Earth didn't say a word. We just launched. Now they see us. The Assembly's sensors ping with alerts every second, Terran warships approaching. Systems once guarded by dozens of cruisers fall in hours. Earth doesn't negotiate anymore. Earth delivers consequences. The galaxy expected weakness. They called us primitive. They thought Earth would stay silent. But Earth does not forget. And Earth never forgives. When the Zalvari annihilated Alara 7, one of Earth's frontier colonies, the galaxy expected an immediate human reaction. The planet had held over 90,000 settlers, engineers, scientists, families. Vaporized in less than an hour. The attack was unprovoked, a so-called disciplinary demonstration, meant to remind newer species of their place in the interstellar order. When news of the massacre reached the Galactic Assembly, most delegates turned their eyes toward Earth, anticipating fury, retaliation, or at the very least, a desperate plea for justice. But Earth gave none. No response came from the Terran High Council. No retaliation. No demands. Not even a public mourning statement. For days, then weeks, then months, Earth maintained complete diplomatic silence. To the established species of the Assembly, many of whom had measured power through noise, threats, and shows of force, this silence was interpreted as a final, pitiful surrender. Earth, they assumed, was broken. A primitive planet that had reached too far and now recoiled in fear. The media called it the collapse of the Terran will. Analysts speculated that humanity would retreat into its system, too fractured by grief to continue its expansion. The Zalvari doubled down on their smugness, boasting that Earth had learned its place and would no longer bark from the corner of the galaxy. In private meetings, the more militarized species laughed, calling humans noisy children who finally shut up. And for a while, that assumption stood unchallenged. But far from the galactic core, behind Earth's thick solar defenses and beyond the reach of spy probes, humanity wasn't grieving, it was calculating. The silence wasn't submission. It was the sound of factories being retooled in orbit around Mars, of lunar military bunkers activating long-forgotten protocols, of Terran AI rerouting defense grids into full war preparation. Humanity was not afraid. It was focused. Because unlike other species, humans had never needed an audience to get dangerous. The galaxy was loud, always had been. Trade signals, distress calls, political debates, pirate frequencies, smuggler codes, and military alerts flowed through the vast comm streams like a constant digital storm. Every species added to the noise, a clamor of empires and colonies and fleets all shouting over each other for attention, dominance, survival. And then, into that chaos came silence. A single pulse transmission broke across every frequency known to intelligent life, every language, every network, every back channel. No encryption. No source code. Just 3 words. "We heard you." That was all. And then the Terran networks vanished. At first, no one believed it. After all, Earth had always been vocal, too vocal, some thought. For a species barely a century into interstellar capability, humans had made themselves known. Their ambassadors were loud, idealistic, and stubborn. Their colonies were fast-growing, their technology clever if crude, and their military, while comparatively small, had a reputation for unpredictability. They were annoyingly persistent. So when Alara 7, a peaceful Terran colony of scientists and terraformers, was obliterated by the Zalvari as a warning to respect sectoral boundaries, the galaxy waited for the inevitable human outrage. They expected threats, demands, grief-fueled declarations of revenge. What they got instead was nothing. Days passed. Then weeks. Analysts flooded newsnets with speculation. Some believed Earth's leaders had fractured in the face of tragedy. Others said the Terran High Council was likely dead or paralyzed. A few believed humanity simply couldn't muster a proper response, and were now hiding behind the legal protections of Assembly protocol. Then came the pulse. No fanfare, no signature, no flourish, just a universal message sent on a scale no one had seen before. The most powerful transmission in recorded galactic history, punching through military encryption, overriding civilian networks, even rerouting encrypted assembly lines. No one could block it. No one could trace it. And it said only this: "We heard you." Instantly, every communication terminal, relay station, and satellite on the outer edges of human-controlled space went offline. No chatter. No merchant logs. No fleet movement signals. Earth was gone from the galactic web. The Terran beacon in the Sol system, once a constant presence broadcasting Earth's identity code to nearby sectors, went dark without warning. Probes sent into human territory disappeared without a trace. Embassies found their access codes revoked, their channels severed. Even Terran citizens abroad went silent, either vanishing entirely or going underground. It was as if, in a single moment, humanity had pulled the plug on itself. Panic didn't start immediately. At first, the galaxy laughed. The Zalvari issued smug public statements, mocking Earth's tantrum. The Assembly's more arrogant species claimed it was a last gasp of ego from a race that had been soundly humbled. The apes have returned to their jungle, one Syrian diplomat said on a broadcast, earning polite laughter. But not everyone was laughing. Among the more observant intelligence agencies, a different fear was taking root. The timing, the coordination, the discipline required to shut down a civilization's external presence so completely, without leaks, panic, or resistance, was terrifying. Earth hadn't collapsed. It had closed. Intentionally. Strategically. The Terrans had sent a message, not just in words, but in what followed. "We heard you," wasn't a cry of fear. It was a signal of readiness. A final notification before whatever was coming next. The silence that followed wasn't the silence of grief or defeat, it was the silence of a countdown. There were those in the assembly who remembered Earth's early interactions. They recalled how humans had behaved during their first conflicts, brash, emotional, but brutally effective. And they knew that when humans got quiet, it wasn't because they were scared. It was because they were planning. For the first time, the assembly authorized classified monitoring of the Sol system. The probes they dispatched never returned. The listening arrays pointed at Earth reported only static, or stranger things, brief bursts of encrypted signals too complex to decipher, frequencies that didn't match known Terran tech, and shadows of ship movements too fast to track. Something was moving behind the veil. Something big. And it wasn't just military hardware. Civilian infrastructure was vanishing too, orbital stations going dark, supply lines redirected, even entertainment networks within human space cut off from the outside. Earth was turning inward. Everything that didn't serve a purpose had gone silent. The whole of humanity was being refitted, reshaped into something the galaxy couldn't see. Something it had never faced before. The silence stretched on. Weeks turned to months. Traders avoided Terran sectors. Border worlds once open to all now had planetary defense systems activated at all hours. And behind it all, that message continued to haunt the stars. "We heard you." Some tried to joke about it. Others quoted it like scripture. But everyone knew something was coming. Earth had spoken. Then Earth had vanished. And now, like the eye of a storm, it sat there, still and quiet, just waiting. And in every war council, on every military bridge, in every high-security meeting across the galaxy, that silence echoed louder than any war cry ever could. Because now the galaxy wasn't just watching Earth. It was waiting, wondering what kind of response was being forged in that black silence. Wondering what kind of ships, weapons, and vengeance were taking shape behind the invisible curtain humanity had pulled shut. And most of all, wondering if they had just awakened something they didn't understand, something that had never needed their permission to strike back. The Galactic Assembly was built on balance, an uneasy harmony between powerful species, old alliances, and centuries of bureaucracy. It was not designed to handle unpredictability, and certainly not the kind Earth had just unleashed. When the first pulse echoed across every known channel, "We heard you," and the Terran systems went instantly dark, it was as if a silent detonation had ripped through the political heart of the galaxy. What had once been treated as an afterthought, a fringe-world civilization barely stepping into the galactic theater, had now forced itself into the center with just 3 words and absolute silence. And that silence did something no fleet ever had. It spread fear. The first signs of panic came quietly. Intelligence departments across the member races began logging erratic activity within human systems. Probes were destroyed mid-transmission. Trade vessels scheduled for routine delivery to Terran-aligned colonies never arrived, or worse, returned emptied, with no logs, no crew, and no memory of what happened. The Terran beacon, a signature code that had always identified Earth's central system, no longer broadcast anything. Not a dead signal, not scrambled interference. Nothing. This void in the digital sky made even the most arrogant species uneasy. Communication was everything in galactic civilization. No race simply stopped talking. Silence meant chaos. Or power. The Zalvari, proud in their destructive show at Alara 7, continued to mock Earth publicly, but even within their war council, there were signs of anxiety. Their generals ordered satellite constellations expanded across the Terran border sectors. Patrol fleets were reinforced, and experimental plasma shields were moved into position, a defensive move disguised as routine military maneuvering. Other species followed suit. The Sirens pulled their commercial vessels out of human space entirely, citing supply route recalibrations. The Virentai relocated 2 of their capital ships to the eastern spiral, not openly admitting fear, but making sure they were close enough to react if Earth made a move. Even the Theris coalition, long allied with Terran diplomats, began purging Terran AI from their fleet systems, afraid that Earth had embedded backdoors during their years of tech exchange. Within the assembly itself, emergency meetings were held daily behind sealed walls. Dissent grew quickly. The diplomat from the Jorathi Confederacy accused the assembly of underestimating human resolve. The counselor of the Draenei Republic issued a panicked warning that the silence wasn't absence, it was preparation. But the more dominant voices, particularly those of the elder races who had grown complacent in their superiority, scoffed. They insisted Earth had no fleet worth fearing, that Terran FTL travel was still limited, their weapon systems rudimentary, and their coordination too fractured for real war. They clung to these assumptions like shields against the growing sense that something had gone very, very wrong. And then the warships began moving. Across dozens of sectors, previously stable defense lines were quietly redrawn. Outer fleets were repositioned closer to Earth-adjacent systems. Battleships once posted at internal checkpoints were now redirected toward potential Terran attack vectors. Even empires who had never faced human aggression began reinforcing their borders, not out of certainty, but instinct. This wasn't an ordinary threat. No fleet had been seen, no declaration of war made, and yet dozens of species were arming themselves. Civilian travel advisories were issued across 14 regions, warning of unverified anomalies near Sol. Black market merchants reported a sudden spike in requests for Terran tech, anything with Earth's signature on it, from handheld weapons to AI cores. It was as though the galaxy, consciously or not, was bracing itself for impact. But fear wasn't just military, it was cultural. Newsnets turned speculative. Entire broadcasts were dedicated to deciphering Earth's 3-word message. Religious sects formed around the phrase, calling it a divine signal of retribution. On less stable worlds, riots broke out as rumors spread that Earth had developed a weapon capable of silencing entire planetary networks. The phrase, "We heard you," was spray-painted on walls in multiple languages, used both as a warning and a rallying cry. It entered songs, protests, even children's stories. Fear of the unknown gave the message weight. The silence that followed gave it meaning. And within that silence, the galaxy realized something terrifying. Earth had changed the rules. Before the first pulse, Earth was a species the galaxy could poke and prod without real consequence. The destruction of Alara 7 had been seen as an unfortunate but necessary demonstration to keep the galactic order intact. Now, with just a single transmission and the total withdrawal from the communications grid, Earth had flipped the script. It had become the unknown variable. It had weaponized anticipation. While other species postured and postulated, Earth had vanished from sight, out of reach, out of understanding. But not out of mind. The Assembly's most advanced surveillance efforts tried to pierce the blackout. Long-range scanners detected anomalies near Mars, Titan, and the asteroid belts, brief spikes of energy, fleet-sized movements shrouded in cloaking fields that didn't match any known tech. Analysts whispered of stealth drives powered by gravitational distortion, of AI-coordinated fleet formations rehearsing invasion routes in silence. But none of it could be confirmed. Earth had sealed itself off not just from attack, but from observation. The Assembly had never dealt with a foe it couldn't see. Behind closed doors, the dominant factions began drafting contingency plans. Emergency defense pacts were quietly signed between rival empires, united only by fear of what Earth might do next. Talks of preemptive strikes surfaced in military circles, but no one dared voice them officially. Not because Earth was invincible, but because no one knew what they were dealing with anymore. The humans had always been emotional, vocal, reckless. Now they were silent, controlled, focused. And in that transformation, they became something else, something the galaxy feared more than rage, patience. The first pulse did more than deliver a message. It changed the shape of galactic warfare. It fractured the Assembly's confidence. It forced powerful species to rethink their defense lines, their diplomacy, even their understanding of humanity itself. Earth had not responded with vengeance. It had responded with strategy. And the silence that followed was not weakness. It was potential energy, wound-tight, waiting to be released. Now, across thousands of light years, every eye was pointed toward the Sol system. Not out of curiosity, but out of dread. Because they all knew something they couldn't say out loud: Earth wasn't gone. Earth was coming. After the first pulse echoed through every comm network and Earth vanished from the galactic grid, the rest of the galaxy reeled in confusion and growing panic. But within the Sol system, behind an impenetrable curtain of silence, something else entirely was unfolding. Earth was not paralyzed. It was not hiding. It was preparing. What followed the blackout was not a collapse, it was a metamorphosis. Over the next 10 years, humanity would undergo the most aggressive, unified, and advanced militarization effort in its history. The Terran High Council activated Project Thunderwake, a contingency long theorized but never attempted, and in doing so, turned Earth into something the galaxy had never seen before: a quiet storm, forming in the shadows, preparing to answer an insult with extinction-level precision. Project Thunderwake was not just a military mobilization. It was a total societal transformation. Every government on Earth, from ancient superpowers to isolated sovereigns, collapsed their sovereignty into a singular command: the Unified Terran Directorate. Former enemies signed treaties overnight. Borders dissolved. Religions merged their doctrines under the survival of species. Corporations were nationalized or absorbed. Economies were restructured not for profit, but for logistics, efficiency, and war production. All of it happened in silence, in a kind of disciplined fury Earth had never known before. The loss of Alara 7 had ignited something older than logic, a collective Terran instinct to endure, adapt, and retaliate, not blindly, but absolutely. The Moon became a forward command station. Mars, once humanity's dream for civilian colonization, was repurposed into a war-forging world, its orbital yards constructing battleships the size of small cities. Saturn's moons became silent shipyards cloaked in digital voids, hidden even from Earth's own public record. AI development, once kept in check by ethics councils and legislative debates, was unleashed with terrifying speed. Under Project Thunderwake, artificial intelligences were not just built for logistics. They were trained for war. Command AIs, tactical AIs, infiltration AIs, networks designed to think faster than any biological general, to coordinate fleet movements at the speed of light, to anticipate enemy doctrine and rewrite countermeasures before the first shot was fired. The project wasn't just technological. It was psychological. Earth's military academies reopened under a new doctrine, multi-species warfare. Soldiers were trained not for planetary defense, but for planetary domination. Simulations were run endlessly, replicas of Zalvari cities, Siren battle tactics, Virantai language dialects, Jorathi psychological patterns. Earth didn't just prepare to fight. It prepared to understand, exploit, and dismantle. Every alien species that had laughed when Alara 7 burned was now being dissected down to cultural reflexes and neural patterns. Their biology, their language, their combat tendencies, their weaknesses. Humanity studied the galaxy like a predator studies its prey. The assembly, meanwhile, spiraled into fear. At first, the silence from Earth was unnerving but manageable. But as time passed and Terran space remained impenetrable, the panic began to take shape. Patrol fleets reported shadows at the edge of human systems, brief distortions in gravity, anomalies in subspace, readings that didn't make sense. Some claimed to spot dark shapes gliding silently just beyond skin range. Others vanished entirely. No debris. No final transmission. Just gone. Whispers began to spread that Earth had found ways to cloak entire armadas, that Terran stealth ships could glide between fleets unnoticed, studying, waiting, logging every vulnerability. The Zalvari, once supremely confident, began pulling dreadnoughts back from their aggressive outposts and repositioning them closer to the core sectors. The Sirens redeployed interceptor fleets near human borders. Dozens of member species began redirecting military assets to monitor potential threats, their words carefully chosen to avoid triggering Earth, just in case the silence broke. And yet Earth said nothing. For 10 years, not a single word. Not a signal. Not a broadcast. Not even a warning shot. But within the void, movement could be felt. The Terran system was alive with silent construction, sensor ghosts of massive ship hulls being moved, power signatures indicating city-scale manufacturing, and the occasional flash of energy that made entire sectors blink. Black site after black site came online, and AI crawlers sent to infiltrate Terran networks returned either corrupted or blank. Earth's digital border had become more secure than any species had thought possible. Even ancient civilizations began whispering the truth they didn't want to believe. Earth had gone dark not to mourn, not to surrender, but to build a war machine under total silence. The assembly tried to keep its panic internal, but cracks began to show. Trade networks realigned. Treaties were reworded with clauses for galactic defense contingencies. Mercenary guilds saw record recruitment as species paid heavily for off-the-books protection. Some tried to reach out, low-frequency messages disguised as peace offerings, inquiries for diplomacy. Earth responded to none of them. The silence persisted. In its place, rumors flourished. Stories of ships appearing and vanishing like ghosts. Of automated drones recovered near Terran space, stripped of all data and tagged with a single phrase carved into their hulls in multiple languages. Observation logged. Over time, even the most skeptical voices in the assembly began to fear not what Earth had become, but what it was becoming. No species had ever unified so completely, so silently. No one had turned a decade of silence into an engine of war. And no civilization had ever returned from such silence without rewriting the balance of power. Because now, Earth was not a collection of nations or a scatter of colonies. It was one will, one mind, one purpose. The unified hum of industry beneath a cold, calculating silence. And deep within that silence, beyond the orbit of Mars, buried inside the control core of Project Thunderwake's central AI lattice, a countdown had already begun. A whisper in machine language, synchronized across fleets, planetary bunkers, stealth satellites, and orbital strike platforms. A signal waiting to be unleashed when the final ship was forged, the last algorithm written, and the final target identified. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but Earth had never disappeared. Earth had just been getting ready. Launch day arrived not with a declaration, but with motion. 12,000 Terran ships emerging from the black zones like steel ghosts returning from myth. For 10 years, the galaxy had waited in paralyzed silence, its eyes locked on the invisible curtain Earth had drawn across its systems. Probes had vanished. Spy fleets had gone mute. Even advanced precog arrays had failed to predict anything from the Terran shadows. And then, without preamble or warning, that silence was broken, not by sound, but by presence. One by one, ship signatures began appearing at the edges of Terranul space. Not near human colonies. Not at trade points. At warfronts. At assembly-controlled borders. At every sector where Earth had once been humiliated, attacked, or erased. There was no message this time. No broadcast. Only ships. Thousands of them. The first to emerge were the Spearhead-class assault cruisers, obsidian in color, angular in design, their hulls emitting no energy signatures yet clearly active. Each one was the length of a small city, armed with magnetic rail cannons, arc-reactive plasma batteries, and gravitational disruption fields that bent local space as they moved. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't flare their drives. They simply appeared, folding into real space with the precision of scalpel blades, positioning themselves into vanguard formations like they'd never left. These were not ships designed to threaten. They were designed to finish. Following them came the Cyclone-class carrier platforms, slower, broader ships built like mobile fortresses. Instead of traditional hangar bays, they deployed their swarms directly through morphing hull apertures. Dozens of fighter drones and manned interceptors spiraling out into formation without a single word of command. These ships weren't just launch vessels. They were self-contained ecosystems, housing AI sub-command centers, automated refineries, medical facilities, and entire battalions of drop soldiers in exoframes. From afar, they looked like drifting metal monoliths. Up close, they pulsed with dormant fury. Then came the Ghost Line recon frigates, nearly invisible to all but the most advanced sensors. Their surfaces shimmered with reactive camouflage, some mimicking the stars behind them, others deliberately phasing out of visible spectrum altogether. These were the eyes and ears of Earth's vengeance, ships built not just to see, but to infiltrate. They could map a planet's defense grid in minutes, sabotage enemy comms in seconds, and deploy multispectral drones capable of turning enemy AI against its creators. It was said later by a Siren admiral that by the time a Ghost Line frigate is detected, the battle's already lost. Trailing behind came the Atlas-class siege platforms, the largest vessels ever produced by humanity. Towering constructs that moved like slow gods. Meant not for speed but certainty, each Atlas bore continent-cleaving orbital cannons, void-mining tractor fields that could tear a moon apart, and a terrifying new weapon the galaxy had never seen before, the Silencer Array, capable of neutralizing all electromagnetic activity within a planetary radius. With a single shot, communications, targeting systems, and orbital defenses went blind. These ships weren't tools of war. They were instruments of judgment. And yet none of these classes caused as much fear as the final wave, the Eclipse-class nullships. Only a dozen were ever confirmed to exist. Coated in a synthetic black so pure it seemed to absorb light itself, their surfaces disrupted even quantum entanglement-based sensors. These ships did not deploy fleets, fire cannons, or make formations. They simply appeared where they weren't expected and erased what stood before them. Entire outposts went silent when nullships passed through. AI cores fried. Gravity wells destabilized. Organic matter disintegrated without a trace. Their power was not brute force, it was deletion. Silent, final, and terrifyingly precise. As all 12,000 vessels took their positions across the galaxy, from the eastern spiral to the crimson wastes, the assembly's listening posts lit up in chaos. No fleet had ever moved like this, simultaneously, flawlessly, without a single detectable launch signal. It was as if they had always been there, hiding in folds of space-time, waiting for the right moment to be seen. The ships didn't ask for surrender. They didn't transmit ultimatums. They weren't broadcasting threats. They were just there, in formation, fully armed, fully awake. Each vessel bore a singular insignia, etched in Terran alloy on the hull in a language all could read, a simple Earth crest merged with a sword descending through a broken ring. Beneath it, one phrase, Project Thunderwake, cycle complete. That inscription was the only announcement Earth made, and yet it said everything. This wasn't a revenge fleet. It was a judgment fleet. Not chaotic retaliation, but deliberate consequence. For 10 years, Earth had gone silent, and now the silence spoke with 12,000 voices of steel and fire. From a strategic perspective, the fleet's arrival was flawless. Within minutes, all major choke points were occupied. Assembly trade lanes were intercepted. Zalvari dreadnought patrols were flanked and disabled before they could transmit distress calls. Viren TICOM satellites blinked out one by one, replaced by Terran signal blockers emitting blank space across their entire spectrum. No shots had been fired, and yet half a dozen member species were already in full retreat. Panic swept the assembly. Emergency sessions were called. War declarations drafted. Peace envoys considered, then cancelled when it became clear there was nowhere to send them that wouldn't be already under Terran lock. And still, the ships did not move further. They waited. In perfect synchronized stillness, the entire fleet held formation across dozens of systems, as if observing, measuring, deciding. The message was clear: Earth had come. Not to talk. Not to ask. To answer. Each second they waited increased the pressure. Entire civilizations paused in terror, wondering if they were next. For the first time in memory, the galaxy realized something horrifying. It had pushed humanity to the edge, and humanity had not fallen. It had flown. Launch Day would later be recorded as the most coordinated fleet movement in galactic history. But history books couldn't capture what it felt like, what it meant to see a species once mocked as weak emerge from the void with the largest armada ever constructed, silent and unwavering. Earth hadn't just built ships. It had built a message made of hulls and weapons and formations. A message that needed no translation. The silence is over. Earth has arrived. The moment humanity's fleet reached the Zalvari borders, the entire quadrant trembled, not from impact, but from the knowledge that nothing would be the same again. It wasn't a slow build-up. There were no negotiations. No official transmission requesting parley. No ceremonial declaration of war or diplomatic posturing. Just the sudden, overwhelming presence of the Terran retribution armada appearing on the edge of the Zalvari Empire, stretching across multiple systems like a shadow swallowing stars. Where once trade ships and scout patrols drifted undisturbed, now there were thousands of Earth-born vessels moving with surgical coordination. They didn't jam communications. They didn't bluff or intimidate. They didn't need to. Their arrival alone was a verdict. The Zalvari military scrambled to respond, but it was already too late. Within minutes of arrival, the Terran fleet enacted Operation Stonefall, a precise, pre-simulated strike designed over the course of a decade. Every target had been selected years before the first cruiser was launched. Every Zalvari war station, defense array, planetary command node, and fleet assembly point had already been mapped, studied, and entered into a tactical web run by Thunderwake Command AI. No decisions were made in real time. This wasn't a battle. This was the execution of a sentence. The first volley struck before the Zalvari command even confirmed the fleet's arrival. Kinetic orbital strikes lanced from Terran spearhead cruisers, hitting fortress satellites and orbital rings with pinpoint devastation. No explosions. No chaos. Just obliteration, clean and calculated. Planetary shields that had held for centuries were shut down by ghost line infiltration units, which had already embedded digital malware into Zalvari defense systems years prior. Entire planetary grids failed in synchrony, and the moment the shields flickered, Atlas-class siege platforms opened fire. Whole swathes of military infrastructure ceased to exist in seconds. The Zalvari attempted to scramble their dreadnought fleets, but half of them never made it off the hangar decks. Silencer arrays from Earth's null ships pulsed through orbit, blanketing entire regions in electromagnetic quiet. No targeting systems, no propulsion commands, no communications. Ships floated in paralysis, helpless to watch as Terran interceptors cut through them with precision rail bursts and EMP pulse warheads. In some sectors, small units of Zalvari Marines fought back, trying to mount ground-based resistance on key military moons. Earth was ready for that too. Drop pods fell like shooting stars, each containing squads of Terran warfighters in adaptive exoframes designed to withstand both radiation and chemical warfare. The moment they landed, coordinated strikes took out command centers, fuel depots, and biocontrol towers. There were no firefights that lasted longer than 5 minutes. There were no prisoners taken. This was not a war of conquest. It was a reckoning. The most terrifying aspect wasn't just the speed of the offensive, but the silence with which it was conducted. The Terran ships did not broadcast demands or gloat. Their soldiers did not shout orders or slogans. Each action was taken with cold discipline, as if the entire operation were being carried out by a single calculating mind. That was the truth behind it. The human fleet was operating under unified AI warfare coordination, each battlefront calculated against thousands of contingencies in real time. While Zalvari commanders argued over countermeasures and called for reinforcements, Earth's fleets were already 4 steps ahead, wiping out resupply depots before the first response orders were even given. Within 24 hours. 7 major Zalvari strongholds had fallen. 2 of their shipyards were reduced to orbiting debris fields. 3 moons with heavy weapon platforms had been cracked open, their cores detonated with gravitational warheads. Every fleet formation they attempted to rally was cut apart mid-transit. Even their backup communication grid, a massive solar relay system spanning half a dozen systems, was targeted and dismantled within minutes, each relay destroyed in perfect sequence to leave no time for redirection. The Zalvari Empire, once feared across the stars for its brutality, was reduced to panic, confusion, and desperate fragmentation. On the 72nd hour of the operation, the Central Zalvari Command Council tried to broadcast a plea, an offer for a ceasefire. It never left the system. The transmission station itself was already under siege by a Terran infiltration squad operating from orbit, their stealth dropship having embedded into the command platform 6 hours before the plea was even written. The humans didn't reply. The station was taken without a single human casualty, its servers copied, scrubbed, and incinerated. The message never mattered. Earth wasn't interested in dialogue. It was there for balance. By the end of the 4th day, nearly every Zalvari military target outside their homeworld system had been neutralized. Only their inner sanctum remained, a planet once thought to be impenetrable, surrounded by 5 concentric rings of defense stations, asteroid artillery platforms, and minefields thick enough to blanket a sun. Earth didn't hesitate. It sent the Eclipse-class nullships forward, not to destroy the defenses, but to turn them off. Each nullship entered stealth mode and blinked into position, their systems emitting micropulses that dismantled enemy AI logic chains mid-operation. Defense rings powered down. Targeting systems failed to acquire locks. Mines drifted silently, no longer responding to commands. And then the Atlas siege ships moved into position. They did not fire indiscriminately. That was never the point. Instead, they isolated and targeted every high command structure, each military spire, and every elite palace that had once ordered the extermination of human lives without thought. One by one, precision strikes lit the surface. A city here. A compound there. No orbital saturation. Just exacting judgment. No civilian sectors were touched, not out of mercy, but out of message. Earth wanted them to see what power looked like when wielded by the once dismissed. The final blow came from orbit. Not a weapon, but a signal. A short-range broadcast sent in both Terran and Zalvari language. Debt collected. Final warning delivered. And then, as quickly as it had begun, the Terran fleet withdrew, not in panic, but in synchronized retreat. Like a tide receding after washing away rot. They left behind only their message, the ruins of an empire's arrogance, and the silence that followed. No occupation. No negotiation. No colonization. Just scars and silence. The Zalvari homeworld, shaken to its core, was left with its people alive but its power shattered. The galaxy watched in horror, not because of what Earth had done, but because of how efficiently it had done it. No rage. No chaos. Just precision. This was first contact all over again. But this time, it wasn't Earth that had reached out, it was Earth that had answered. And now, everyone understood, the humans had not come to speak. They had come to be understood. The aftermath of Earth's return reshaped the galaxy more violently than any superweapon ever forged. The assault on the Zalvari Empire, swift and without mercy, sent ripples that reached every star system, every council chamber, every throne. The once mighty empire, infamous for its brutality and iron-fisted diplomacy, had been dismantled in less than a week by a force that hadn't even existed in the galactic consciousness a decade prior. And Earth had done it without speeches, without fanfare, and, most terrifyingly, without hesitation. It wasn't war. It was precedent. A clear demonstration that silence didn't mean surrender, it meant warning. And now that the silence had ended, the galaxy had no illusions left. Earth was not coming. Earth was here. Civilizations that once dismissed humanity now scrambled to reframe centuries of arrogance into postures of submission. Ambassadors who had ignored Terran requests in the past now flooded diplomatic channels with offers of allegiance, trade, and military support. The proud Resari clans, long considered neutral observers of galactic power, publicly declared Earth a sovereign apex civilization, offering their subspace relay networks to Terran control in exchange for non-interference. The Trivalan merchants, who had once imposed sanctions on Earth for immature trade behavior, reopened all routes at zero tariff and pledged resource tithes to the Terran High Council. Even the enigmatic Serevith, the psychic civilization that claimed to see through time, bowed, not because they feared death, but because they saw no alternate future where Earth didn't reshape the order of everything. The galaxy did not bleed, it folded. Not because of another war, but because of the memory of one. The image of 12,000 ships exiting shadow space and vaporizing an empire with machine-like efficiency now haunted strategic planning sessions across every species' war rooms. Civilizations who had thought themselves untouchable now quietly reevaluated their borders. Many began dismantling orbital weapons platforms and repurposing war fleets into cargo carriers, not as peace gestures, but as appeasement offerings, hoping Earth might see them as non-threats, or at least not as targets. Within the assembly, panic solidified into desperation. The body that had once seen itself as the central authority of galactic diplomacy now sat hollowed out by fear. Meetings were shorter. Resolutions were hesitant. Member species no longer looked to the assembly for guidance, but for survival instructions. After days of chaos and political paralysis, the emergency Grand Conclave was called, an unprecedented gathering of every remaining voting civilization. It was meant to be a show of unity, a reaffirmation of purpose. Instead, it became a stage for surrender. The assembly speaker, once a pompous bureaucrat from the Tharvan Accord, opened the meeting not with condemnation of Earth's actions, but with a plea. He read from a hastily prepared peace proposal, addressed directly to the Unified Terran Directorate. The letter, dripping with caution and careful wording, praised Earth's strategic brilliance, and expressed the Assembly's desire to collaborate in rebuilding a better future through mutual understanding. It was a surrender wrapped in diplomacy. But Earth didn't answer. No reply came. Not in words. Not in signals. Not even through intermediaries. The silence returned, and this time, it was worse. Because now the galaxy knew what followed it. Delegates left the chamber shaken. The attempt to initiate talks hadn't just failed, it had been ignored. Earth had become something more than a power. It had become a presence, one that didn't need to sit at tables or speak through proxies. It had already spoken, and its language was action. This revelation shattered what remained of the Assembly's authority. More than a dozen member species began formal secessions, choosing instead to align directly with Earth's growing influence sphere. Small empires began forming around Terran trade stations, hoping proximity to humanity meant protection, or at least time. Others began sending resources, technology, even soldiers as gifts. They called them tributes. Earth did not respond to them either. But it didn't reject them. And that was enough. The most drastic changes came not from the powerful, but from the desperate. On fringe planets, entire governments were overthrown by factions that pledged loyalty to the Terran directive before Earth had even acknowledged their existence. Prophets emerged, claiming to speak the will of humanity, many of them fakes, but all of them spreading the same truth: the age of the Assembly was over. A new age had begun, one shaped not by bureaucracy, but by power. Real, absolute power. And that power had a flag now. It was dark, marked with silver, and bore a sword through a broken ring. Yet through all this, Earth remained unmoved. Its fleets held position. Its commanders gave no interviews. Its AI networks did not gloat. And that silence, the same terrifying silence that came after Alara 7, now became something else entirely: command. When Earth didn't move, either did the galaxy. When Earth didn't speak, no one dared to. The Assembly's elite intelligence group, the Watchers of Echo, issued a final classified memo to remaining leadership. The contents leaked within hours. It contained one sentence: "We are not in control anymore." In private, surviving Zelvari nobles, those who had fled into the galactic dark during the fall of their empire, gathered to contemplate revenge. But even among them, the idea was whispered with shame. Their fleets were gone. Their pride had been dismantled atom by atom. They weren't planning rebellion. They were praying they wouldn't be next. In those hidden corners, even the most hardened warlords referred to Earth not by name, but by nickname: the Quiet End. But not every species resisted the new order. Some embraced it fully. The Drenari Republic, long advocates for Terran rights within the Assembly, declared open alliance with Earth and renamed their outer colonies New Soul Sectors. The Kalis Accord dismantled their aging war doctrine entirely and requested Terran AI systems to replace their outdated network. Within cycles, Earth became the center of galactic gravity, not just militarily, but culturally, politically, economically. Every ship design started to copy Terran aesthetics. Every language updated their dictionaries to include Terran slang. Even timekeeping began to shift. Before the silence, and after the return, became standard galactic markers. Earth had, without asking, become the measure of all things. In the span of weeks, the galaxy bent, not because it was broken, but because it had seen what breaking truly looked like. The fallout wasn't nuclear or digital. It was psychological. A collapse not of buildings or bodies, but of pride. The galaxy had learned, brutally and without warning, that there was a line one should never cross. Earth had drawn that line in silence. And then, when it was crossed, it had responded not with noise, but with force so absolute it reshaped civilization itself. Now, as the stars slowly recalibrated to a new order, the question hanging over every species was no longer, "What will Earth do next?" but rather, "What will Earth allow next?" And that question would define the next 1,000 years. When the galaxy finally received a message from Earth, it did not come in the form of a plea, nor as a reply to the Assembly's peace overtures. It came as a declaration. A single, unbroken transmission, clear, untranslated, and unstoppable, flooded every comm relay, civilian broadcast, military channel, and diplomatic frequency from the core sectors to the outer dust ring. Every species heard it. Every empire received it. And in that moment, the last illusion of equality shattered. Earth had not remained silent out of hesitation. It had been waiting until the galaxy was ready to hear what it had to say, not as a fellow member of civilization, but as its reckoner. The voice in the message was neither human nor artificial, but something in between. Synthesized for clarity, not familiarity. It spoke without emotion, without grandeur, without pretense. It simply stated, "This is Earth. This is humanity. We are not part of the galaxy. We are above it." There were no threats. No list of demands. No expressions of regret or triumph. Just a shift in tone so subtle, yet so absolute, that it redefined the power structure of the known universe. The message continued, outlining what it called the Terran doctrine of sovereign ascendance. It was not a treaty. It was a set of new universal constants, rules not to be negotiated, but acknowledged. Earth had not come to participate. It had come to govern, whether through action or omission. The first tenet was clarity itself. Earth would no longer recognize the authority of the Galactic Assembly. It called the institution a relic of failed diplomacy and systemic cowardice. A bureaucracy that had traded moral spine for collective convenience. The Assembly had stood idle while Alara 7 burned, while human diplomats were mocked, and while Terran colonies were exploited, regulated, and then erased. Earth had learned from that silence. Now, it would enforce its own. It did not seek revenge, it simply offered structure. A new one. Built not on consensus, but on consequence. The second point shook even those who had already bent the knee. Earth did not seek conquest, but neither would it tolerate interference. Any incursion into Terran-declared autonomous zones would be considered a challenge. No warnings would follow. No diplomacy would be entertained. Every response would be final. Entire quadrants were named. Star systems that Earth had claimed not by force, but by presence. Some weren't even near Earth's original sphere of influence. And yet, no one contested it. Because everyone remembered the Zalvari. The transmission mentioned them only once. Their lesson is now the galaxy's law. The third element was perhaps the most devastating, though it sounded the most peaceful. Humanity had no interest in ruling anyone, but it would no longer be ruled. Earth would not annex territory. It would not absorb governance. It would not dictate policy to civilizations who did not threaten its own. But it would exist beyond the galactic order, outside its currency systems, outside its political frameworks, outside its technological regulations. In essence, Earth had declared itself a civilization apart, not in isolation, but in dominion. It didn't need borders, it had reach. It didn't need allies, it had inevitability. And from that place, it would watch, listen, and intervene only when absolutely necessary. This declaration terrified the galaxy more than any fleet movement. Because it wasn't loud. It wasn't boastful. It wasn't imperial. It was detached. Cold. Final. The kind of message a god would send, not a neighbor. And that's exactly how many civilizations began to view Earth, not as a species, but as a force. A fact. An authority woven into the rules of galactic existence itself. In the weeks that followed, hundreds of minor civilizations sent acknowledgement transmissions. Some included gifts, others offered data, defense schematics, or entire mineral rights contracts. Not because Earth asked. Because Earth no longer needed to ask. Participation was no longer about politics. It was about survival. The larger powers, those once seated at the core of assembly governance, found themselves in a brutal identity crisis. The Siren High Command, once the military backbone of assembly enforcement, formally dissolved their expeditionary fleet, stating it would be unwise to operate offensively in a galaxy now defined by Terran tolerances. The Draenei Republic rebranded their defense charter into a collaborative protection grid in harmony with Terran oversight. Even the aloof Serevith, who had claimed predictive insight into the galaxy's future, released a rare public statement. "We did not see this. And now we no longer need to." The reaction among common citizens across the galaxy was even stranger. On countless worlds, humans had once been seen as erratic, emotional, and inferior. Now, the perception inverted. Human culture, long dismissed, became fetishized. Terran philosophy, art, and historical texts surged in popularity. Ancient Earth languages became fashionable to learn. The phrase "Earth watches" became both a joke and a prayer. On some planets, monuments to human silence were built, not to honor war, but to represent the absence of weakness. In the galaxy's collective mind, Earth had become a mirror, and everyone was terrified of what it showed them. The final segment of Earth's message offered only one ongoing directive: do better. Or be removed. It didn't say how. It didn't say when. But the implication was unmistakable. Earth had not risen from the ashes to make friends. It had returned to ensure the future didn't become a repeat of the past. It wasn't interested in being thanked. It wasn't waiting for apologies. It had simply evolved into something the galaxy was no longer prepared to confront. Something with patience sharper than any blade, and memory deeper than any archive. After the message ended, silence returned. Not because Earth demanded it, but because no one knew what to say. The transmission had no encryption. It didn't need any. No one dared to corrupt it, question it, or reinterpret it. It was replayed again and again across newsnets, council chambers, and battle academies. Some called it doctrine. Others called it prophecy. But all understood one thing: Earth had changed the rules. Not just of war, but of existence. Humanity no longer needed to speak loudly. It had already proven that when it whispered, galaxies trembled. And now, it had spoken clearly for the last time. Earth had not rejoined the galaxy. Earth had outgrown it. And everything that came next, every alliance, every war, every breakthrough or disaster, would unfold under the shadow of that single truth. Earth was no longer in the galaxy. Earth was above it. The final battle was not a desperate struggle, nor a contest of equals. It was a reckoning, long overdue and meticulously calculated. After years of silence, preparation, and surgical strikes across the Zalvari Empire, Earth's vengeance fleet finally turned its full attention toward the enemy's last bastion, the Zalvari homeworld of Zarkoris. The planet had long been deemed untouchable, surrounded by layers of ancient defenses, orbital rings, deep space artillery, and mines laced with anti-FTL destabilizers. The Zalvari believed their world would stand forever, insulated by centuries of conquest and fear. They believed Earth, like all others, would falter before it reached the core. But Earth was done with belief. It had come for results. The Vengeance Fleet was unlike any formation the galaxy had seen. It was not simply a fleet of warships, it was a legacy made metal. A gathering of every vessel forged under Project Thunderwake, upgraded, battle-tested, and synchronized under an AI lattice so precise that the entire armada moved like one organism. Spearhead-class cruisers formed the front, their kinetic plating glowing with suppressed energy. Eclipse-class nullships prowled the outer flanks, cloaked from all detection. Atlas-class siege platforms held position at long range, calibrating coordinates already prefed by Ghostline recon frigates that had infiltrated the sector weeks in advance. Overhead, Cyclone-class carriers released clouds of autonomous drones, each carrying targeted strike orders down to the second. The Zalvari knew this day would come. They had been preparing. Or so they believed. Their final fleets orbited Zarkoris in triple-layer formations, hundreds of dreadnoughts, cruisers, and assault vessels armed with everything their empire had left. The defensive rings above the planet were bristling with high-energy weapons, AI-coordinated gun emplacements, and gravitational turrets designed to shred mass. Their orbital platforms turned inward, ready to engage at full saturation. They even deployed legacy systems, ancient war relics powered by unstable cores and forbidden tech, desperate to reclaim the arrogance they once wielded. But they were preparing for an invasion. Earth did not invade. Earth executed. The battle began without warning. Not with a charge, but with disappearance. Seconds before the first shot, every Zalvari fleet ship lost visual lock on the Terran forces. Sensors scrambled. Targeting systems blinked static. Coordinates returned null. Then, from every blind spot, Terran ships reappeared, already moving, already firing. The first wave of strikes didn't target ships or cannons. They struck the command relays, power junctions, and comm spires embedded into the orbital lattice. Each shot was silent and flawless. Within 6 seconds, over 30% of the outer defense ring was paralyzed. The Zalvari responded with fury, launching all fighters and saturating space with plasma salvos, hoping to overwhelm Earth's formations. But the Vengeance fleet didn't react in panic. It adapted. Every missile was intercepted mid-trajectory by intercept drones. Each dreadnought volley was countered before impact. Every time a Zalvari squadron tried to close distance, a Terran nullship erased it with spatial disruption pulses. Tactical AIs anticipated every maneuver before it was issued. Entire Zalvari wings were funneled into kill zones disguised as retreat corridors. And the Terran losses? 0. On the planet's surface, Zalvari warlords attempted to mobilize planetary defense grids, atmospheric cannons, EMP generators, and gravity disruptors. But they discovered their own systems had been compromised. Ghostline AI infiltrators had embedded themselves into the planetary network days prior, mimicking Zalvari command protocols. When the ground defenses tried to respond, they triggered self-lockdowns. What few functioning surface cannons remained were eliminated by high-velocity orbital strikes before they could even power to full charge. The real killing blow came not from brute force, but from strategic decapitation. A Terran strike team, deployed by orbital stealth drop, infiltrated the Zalvari High Command Citadel, deep beneath Zarkoris' surface. The fortress was considered impenetrable, defended by centuries of design, DNA-gated vaults, and dozens of elite guards. But Earth had already acquired Zalvari genetic templates. The infiltration unit, enhanced by Terran biotech, adaptive cloaks, and predictive combat AI, breached the stronghold in under 30 minutes. The entire ruling council was neutralized without a single human casualty. No bombings. No collateral damage. Just precise removal. With their leadership gone, the remaining Zalvari forces fractured. Ships began fleeing in chaos, many colliding with each other or surrendering before Earth even opened fire. The orbital defenses, once fearsome and unyielding, were now debris. Terran forces never landed in mass numbers. They didn't need to. The enemy was broken from the top down. Earth had made its point without glassing the world or triggering extermination protocols. Humanity didn't seek to destroy the species, it sought to remove the empire. And it did, with surgical excellence. By the 72nd minute of the operation, the battle was effectively over. What remained of the Zalvari home defense surrendered unconditionally. Terran ships moved into passive orbit, watching but not occupying. The transmission that followed was short. Zarkoris is neutralized. The debt is paid. The name is erased. Earth did not claim the planet. It did not establish bases or colonies. It left the ruins intact, not as territory, but as a lesson. The Terran fleet withdrew in the same eerie synchronization with which it had arrived, leaving behind silence, ashes, and the undeniable truth that Earth could have done more, and chose restraint. The total tally of human casualties was 12. Not 12,000. Not 1,200. 12. Most were minor injuries sustained during recon drops or internal system failures. No frontline soldier died. No Terran vessel was lost. It was not simply a victory. It was a masterstroke of vengeance wrapped in mercy. Earth had shown the galaxy that it did not just possess the power to destroy, but the will to decide when not to. That, more than anything, terrified the other species watching. The fall of Zarkoris marked the end of the Zalvari Empire and the final close of the first human reckoning. But more than that, it marked a turning point in galactic history. The myth of Terran fragility had been buried under steel and silence. And the name of Earth, once spoken in mockery, was now etched into every war manual, every strategic simulation, every political treaty. Not as a threat, but as a boundary. From that day forward, the stars knew, if Earth arrives, it's already too late. And if Earth is silent, you should start to pray. The galaxy had never known true silence until Earth imposed it. For years, the Terran presence loomed like a gravity well over every council, every corridor of power, every whisper between empires. The assembly had collapsed in all but name, its relevance suffocated under the sheer weight of Earth's retribution. The fall of the Zalvari was not just a military defeat, it was a psychological breaking point. No empire, no coalition, no species dared challenge the new reality. Earth no longer fought battles. It simply issued outcomes. The Terran silence wasn't enforced by occupation or threat. It was deeper than that, an understood, unspoken order like the hush before a storm none dared provoke. But even silence has its cycle, and after years of strategic stillness, Earth finally spoke again. The moment shattered the breathless anticipation that had gripped the stars. The message was unlike the cold declarations of vengeance that followed Thunderwake. It wasn't a warning, nor a demand. It was a statement of transition. Earth acknowledged the end of its isolation, not because it was seeking to rejoin the galactic stage, but because it was ready to redefine it. A new Terran broadcast rippled across the stars, once again bypassing all encryption, all interference. In every language, to every species, it said only this: the reckoning is over. The silence ends. Build something worthy. Or we will. The meaning was clear. Earth was not stepping down from its position. It was establishing its place above. The implications of that moment were immediate and profound. Within days, the fractured remnants of the former assembly reconvened under a new banner, the Accord of Reconciliation, a restructured body less focused on sovereignty and more on compliance. It had no central capital, no voting blocks, no executive power. Instead, it functioned as a decentralized forum for planetary governance to align themselves to Terran principles of conduct. Earth didn't claim authority within it. It watched it. And that was enough. Every species knew, any resolution passed through the Accord would only hold weight if Earth didn't object. That unspoken reality gave the Accord more stability than the old assembly ever had. Trade changed overnight. The Terran economic model, once dismissed as chaotic and inefficient, became the template for interstellar currency stabilization. Terran credits were backed not by material goods or energy, but by technological licensing. If a civilization wanted access to human-grade AI, propulsion, or synthetic biology, it had to engage on Terran terms. Within a month, over 80% of advanced trade hubs switched to Terran standard metrics. Not through coercion, but necessity. Earth had not just dominated military power, it had redefined value itself. The cultural effects were just as potent. The galaxy, long fragmented into linguistic and philosophical factions, began adopting elements of Terran thought not as mimicry, but as survival instinct. Terran literature became mandatory study in elite academies. Entire civilizations restructured their military doctrines based on Terran battlefield principles: efficiency, precision, and silence. Even religious systems mutated. On distant moons and core-world temples, figures resembling armored Terran soldiers were quietly introduced into mythology as agents of final balance. Where once Earth was the subject of ridicule or pity, it was now a symbol of inevitability. But Earth, for all its power, did not ascend into tyranny. It enforced no dogma, installed no governors, and issued no imperial demands. Instead, it maintained a single truth: stability through consequence. Terran fleets no longer hovered near borders. They hovered near fault lines, geopolitical or otherwise. Conflicts between minor species ceased overnight when Terran surveillance ships simply appeared in orbit. No threat. No words. Just presence. And if violence did occur, retribution came not from war, but from erasure. Communications went dark. Trade collapsed. Technology licenses revoked. Civilizations that violated the Terran peace simply vanished from relevance. Not by force, but by removal from the galactic conversation. They became invisible. Forgotten. And while the galaxy recalibrated around this new order, Earth itself underwent a transformation of its own. The unified Terran Directorate dissolved quietly, replaced by the Council of Continuance, a decentralized body of hybrid human-AI advisors that didn't govern people, but guided systems. Human society was no longer built around survival, but around curation. Earth turned inward, directing its vast capabilities toward research, ecological repair, interdimensional exploration, and deeper philosophical questions. Humanity no longer sought to conquer stars, it sought to understand them. And in doing so, it became a civilization no longer defined by its wounds, but by its patience. The younger species looked to Earth not for orders, but for rhythm. Its silence once created dread. Now, its voice shaped intention. When Earth endorsed a peace summit, it was attended by everyone. When it offered guidance on AI regulation, it was adopted without edit. When it requested galactic cooperation for a universal refugee corridor, thousands of worlds responded before the message had even fully propagated. Earth didn't demand obedience. It inspired compliance. Its judgment had become law, not by decree, but by reputation. And yet, not all were content. In distant corners of the galaxy, there were whispers of rebellion, resentment, and resurgence. Some called Earth a sleeping tyrant. Others, a myth wrapped in steel. A few even tried to test the edges, disrupting Terran trade relays, attempting cyber incursions, or violating protected zones. Each time, Earth responded not with warships, but with reality. Their systems failed. Their fleets scattered. Their names disappeared from shared data nets. And in the vacuum they left behind, only the memory of consequence remained. The galaxy moved on, but it moved in Earth's shadow. And then, slowly, something remarkable began to happen. Stability held. War diminished. Petty empires collapsed without violence, their citizens absorbed into stronger coalitions built on mutual survival. Science flourished. Art reawakened. Exploration resumed beyond the spiral arms. Not because Earth enforced peace, but because, for the first time in galactic history, peace was possible. The fear of Earth had given way to the shape of Earth, its stillness, its structure, its refusal to descend into the chaos it once endured. Thus began the post-silence age. Not ruled by Earth, but balanced by it. Every species remembered the cost of Terran wrath, but they also saw the reward of Terran order. Earth had spoken. Not loudly. Not often. But unmistakably. Its voice now echoed across centuries as a constant, measured, weighted final. The era of Terran silence had ended. And in its place stood something stronger. Terran presence. They thought Earth would remain quiet. That it would grieve in the shadows, break beneath pressure, and vanish like so many before it. But Earth did not forget. Earth remembered every insult, every massacre, every silence forced upon it. And when the time came, it didn't scream. It didn't rage. It acted with precision, with patience, and with power that rewrote the very laws of galactic order. Now, Earth no longer begs for a seat at the table. It is the table. The era of pleading is over. The age of waiting is over. Earth speaks, and the stars hold their breath. If this story of human defiance, strategy, and transformation gripped you, don't stay silent. Subscribe to the channel for more HFY stories that put humanity at the center of legend. Like the video if you believe Earth would rise just like this. And don't forget to share it with those who still believe humans are just another species. Let them see what we could become. Humanity doesn't ask. Humanity doesn't kneel. Humanity reminds the galaxy why it should listen. ***, we'll see you in the next reckoning.